Well, good afternoon, Shabbat Shalom from Irving, Texas, from a rather warm summer day. And today's presentation will be continuing of our study into the Beatitudes. I believe this is part 4, if I remember correctly. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to go straight into it. This is the study of the Beatitudes as per the account in Matthew 5. Now, if I remember correctly, we left off in verse 8. If my memory serves me correctly. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see Elohim, or they shall see Yahweh. We have a few other scriptures actually that talk about this. Let's back up to Psalm 115, Psalm 15. Keep your place in Matthew, please, because we'll turn back there. Hopefully we'll finish this up today. But if not, well, we don't. Psalm 15. I'm just going to read the whole psalm. Psalm 15. Who may abide in your tabernacle? Who may dwell upon your holy hill? Well, anciently, who did this? Back in the day of the time this was written, who was to abide in their tabernacle? Yahweh dwelt in the temple. Remember, in the form of the Shekinah? I'm probably not saying that right.
Shekinah.
The Shekinah, okay. The Shekinah. And the priests were allowed to go in there to perform their duties. He who may abide in your holy hill, he who walks uprightly and works righteousness, and speaks truth in his heart. Not just with his lips, but please take note, it says in his heart. In their hearts. He who does not backbite with his tongue, nor does any evil to his neighbor, nor does he take any reproach against his friend. In whose eyes a vile person is despised, but he who honors those who fear Yahweh, not just honors Yahweh, but also those his brethren, those who also fear Yahweh. He who swears to his own hurt and does not change. He who does not put out his money for usury, nor does he take a bribe against the innocent. He who does these things shall never be moved. Yes, Tom.
Years ago, I was shown something that really helped in the congregation I was in, and it was a problem that brethren were having with each other. And it came to me to take this one person aside who helped me and corrected me in the past. But it says in here in the terms of verse 3 about not backbiting with your tongue and not doing evil to your neighbor, nor does take up a reproach against someone. And this individual had come to another individual and was saying, I would like you to pray with me about this person, and proceeded to bring some real reproach. And it disturbed this person. He came to me and I said, well, you've been a good source of advice, wisdom, correction to me. We're not supposed to do that any more than it came to me. If someone came to you from UPS or FedEx and they got this package and it's dripping out with something that really is rotting and smell, you wouldn't sign for it. You'd say return to sender. And I said, you need to tell this person they need to take that away from you, not bring that to you anymore. In other words, don't take up a reproach against your neighbor. That's one of the people that says in this beautiful psalm is not going to be lacking and be able to be in Yahweh's kingdom and his family, his holy hill. And they're not taking money in usury. They're willing to proclaim what they're going to do, even to their own hurt. My grandfather used to say that people that worked him out in the oil fields when he was wildcatting in West Texas, because based on Deuteronomy, he didn't give them their garment at the end of the day, but he paid them cash every day because he realized the kind of lifestyle they're in. And he said those men would jump through hoops for me because I was truly faithful to them and I was willing to keep my word even to my own hurt. This is such a rich psalm that so beautifully is a segue to where you're going to go in Matthew 5 in the Beatitudes. This is inspiring.
Okay, while we're still in Psalms, let's flip over to Psalm 24, please. We're going to do the first 6 verses. First 6 verses of Psalm 24. The earth is Yahweh's, and as all its fullness. The world and those who dwell therein. That way it means the entirety of his creation. For he has founded it upon the seas, and he has established it upon the waters. Who may ascend into the hill of Yahweh? Or who may stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who has not lifted up his soul to an idol, or is he sworn deceitfully. He shall receive a blessing from Yahweh, and righteousness from Elohim of his salvation. This is Jacob, the generation who seek him, who seek your face.
Seek your face.
Question, who does he mean by that? This is Jacob? Does he mean as in, well, he means the house of Israel, but does he mean, is it physically or spiritually, as in the community of believers? Aren't we explaining both Colossians, Ephesians, Galatians? That is, all those who are called and grafted in, regardless of your physical, human, flesh and blood heritage? Paul explains that very well in those passages. This is Jacob. Because if you believe, you're grafted in and counted in as Israel. And even if you are flesh and blood of Israel, what does it say? Well, what does Paul teach us there? If you don't believe, it's not worth anything. Circumcision is nothing if you don't believe. Any other question or comment, anyone? Any thoughts you care to share? Because back in continuing in Matthew, verse 8 says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see Elohim. What exactly does this mean, they shall see Elohim? Or they shall see Yahweh? Well, is there anyone in the past, in the scriptures, that has seen Elohim, that has seen Yahweh? Now to start with, let's make it plain that no one has seen the Father except for one.
And even
The Son.
Nobody except Yahshua the Son. No one has seen the Father, but yeah, we do have a references to a few people who may have seen Yahweh. Let's look, because let's take a quick look in Genesis 1:18 verse 1. We're going to take a look at a few. Let's see what Scripture says about this. But first things first, let's remember no one has seen the Father. Genesis 18, verse 1. Then Yahweh appeared to him by the terebinth tree of Mamre, as he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked. Behold, 3 men were standing by him when he saw them, and he ran from the tent door to meet them. And he bowed himself to the ground. He says, my master, if I have now found favor in your sight, please do not pass by your servant. And here he tells them to take a seat underneath the terebinth tree, cool yourself in the heat of the day, and my wife will make yourself something good to eat. Now, who is this that Abraham is seeing? It says 3 men. Before this is out, who are these three men really? Who were these three men really? Were they actually flesh and blood men? No, they were not. Thank you, Quran. They were not. Because who is this that's having a conversation with Abraham? We were given a hint down in verse 17. It says, then Yahweh said, this is him talking to his company. Verse 16. Then the men rose from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them on their way. And then Yahweh said, well, shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing, since Abraham shall surely become a great and a mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. For I have known him, in order that he may command his children and his household after him, that they keep the way of Yahweh, to do righteousness and do justice, and that Yahweh may bring to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And Yahweh said to him, because the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great, because their sin is very grave, I will now go down and see whether how they have done this according to all the outcry against it, that it has come against me. And if not, I will know. And they turned away from there, and they went toward Sodom. But Abraham stood still before who? Before Yahweh. That's what's written right there. Now, is this the Father? Remember, no one has seen the Father, no one has heard him. So who is this Yahweh that? Yahshua, thank you, yes. It is Yahshua. Because Abraham, through the rest of the chapter, goes on bargaining from 50 to 45 to 40 on down.
Okay.
Yes, David.
So 19 kind of gives you a light or lens into the differences.
I can't hear David. Speak up, please.
18:19 gives you a glimpse into the difference. That in this verse, Yahweh is talking about himself in third person.
Yes, he is.
And he wouldn't do that.
Right.
Yeah, he would not say his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of Yahweh to do justice. He would say, they will keep my ways to do justice.
Good show, yes.
So he's talking in third person here.
Third person.
Well, but that's Joshua speaking. Maybe he's in reference to the Father.
Exactly. It's Yahshua speaking in reference to the Father. Yahweh wouldn't talk about himself.
That's right. Because Yahweh's not like these guys in the gangster movies, right, that talk about themselves in the third person. Ever seen these gangster movies and these guys talk about themselves in the third person? Jimmy doesn't, some gangster named Jimmy is upset with you. He said, now Jimmy doesn't like it when you do this. Jimmy doesn't like it when you're late with his bribe and his payment, when your protection money. But who's Jimmy talking about? He's talking about himself. See, Yahweh's not a mobster. No, this is Joshua speaking, the Son. And he's speaking in reference to the Father, which makes it sound like a third person reference, when in fact it is not. One of the great mysteries of the Scriptures, Yahweh's wonderful mysteries. It's verse 33. Let's look at verse 33 of Genesis 18 while we're still here. So Yahweh went his way as soon as he had finished speaking with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his place. 19 verse 1. Now the two angels came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. So when these two fellows met Lot, Joshua was not with him. It was just the two other men in his company, wasn't it? So verse 33 of chapter 18 is actually quite fascinating. Yahweh went his way. Where did he go? If he went his way, it's when he's finished with Abraham, and the two angels the two men with him rode on into Sodom. Where did this Yahweh go? Where did he go? It would seem to be that he went back up into heaven to his Father, didn't he? That's what it would appear. Because the two men, remember, the two men here ride into, it's just the two men that ride into Sodom. Not Yahshua. So it's Abraham and Sarah that see him, but not necessarily Lot. Let's continue. Who else has seen Yahweh? Let's try Genesis 32, please. Genesis 32, let's drop down to verse 30.
30.
Yes, Quran.
32:30.
32:30, you're correct. 32:30. This is Jacob's famous wrestling match. The angel. This is right after the angel, Jacob demand, the angel karate chops Jason in the hip to let him go, and he said, Jacob demands to let him know his name. He, verse 29 tells him, well, why do you ask about my name? But he blessed him. There anyway in Jake, verse 30 of Genesis 32, Genesis 30, 32, or 32:30, I should say. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, because I have seen Elohim face to face, and yet my life is preserved. So he knew he was, so if, gotta remember, no one has yet seen the Father, so who is this he's having this wrestling match with?
Angel.
An angel. An unnamed angel. Or was it in fact Joshua? We don't, but yeah, Jacob says, he says, I have seen Elohim face to face, and my life is preserved. Let's go over to Numbers 12, please. Fast forward to Numbers chapter 12. And we will begin in verse 8. Actually, let's pick it up in verse 5. Get just a little bit of context here. This is where Miriam and Aaron are speaking out against Moses. And he corrects them, and Yahweh says, verse 5, then Yahweh came down in the pillar of the cloud. So who came? Yahweh came down in the pillar of the cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called upon Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. Then he says, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, make myself known to him in a vision, and I'll speak to him in a dream. But not so with my servant Moses, because he is faithful in all my house, and I speak with him how? I can't hear anybody.
Face to face.
Face to face, thank you.
And brother, that means, the word in Hebrew, Peniel, means face of Elohim.
Face of Elohim.
Yeah.
I will speak to him face to face, and even plainly, and not in dark sayings. And he sees the form of Yahweh. Why are then you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? For the anger of Yahweh was roused against him, and he departed. From here on, Miriam becomes white as snow, becomes infected with leprosy, white like snow, it says. They put her out of the camp for a period, and eventually she's healed to the outcrying of Moses, the intercession of Moses, and then she's readmitted to the camp, and then the camp gets to march on closer, ever so closer to the land. It's funny because when I say funny, I don't mean ha ha ha. I mean funny, strange, funny, peculiar. Here, Because it says, I speak to him face to face, and even plainly, not in dark, and he sees the form of Yahweh. So what does this mean? Anybody? Any thoughts? Any ideas? He sees the form of Yahweh. Question. How was man formed at the day of creation? In the image of Yahweh. That's what we're told in Genesis 2. Genesis 3. They were formed in the image of Yahweh. So he saw him in the form of a man, but he did not see him in all his glory. And then another account, Moses tells him, I want to see you in all your glory. And what does Yahweh tell me? You can't handle that. No. You can't, no. We're not. You can't handle that.
Didn't he pass? Is there something in scripture where he shut him in the mountain and he only saw his backside when he went past?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was as glorious as he ever got to see Yahweh. Got to see him. You're correct, Quran. Yes,
The
Tom.
humorous thing that I've seen in black culture, many people, and maybe considered a little bit uppity or arrogant, they say, speak to the hand. And that's what was happening there. He lovingly, because you can't stick your head in a nuclear reactor either.
No.
He put up his hand to shield him in the cleft
Mm-hmm.
So that,
and then passed by, and he proclaimed his name by, if you'll read that account, it's so beautiful. He describes some of his divine character attributes as he's passing Moshe in the cleft of the rock.
And here comes David. Yes.
I was just going to backtrack on Jacob's encounter.
Okay.
They're in 32 of Genesis.
Yeah, no, the same encounter is described in Hosea 12.
Oh, Hosea, that's right.
Hosea 12. All right, let's go there, David.
Let's go there, yeah.
Let's go there. I missed that one.
Hosea 12, 2 through 4.
Hosea 12. Hosea what?
12, 2 through 4.
12.
Hosea 12, 2 through 4.
Ah. Hosea 12.
Hosea 12,
There it is.
verses 2 through 4. Yahweh brings a charge against Judah and will punish Jacob according to his ways. According to his deeds, he will recompense him. He took his brother by the heel and the womb, and in his strength he wrestled with Elohim.
There it is. Wow.
Yes, he struggled with the angel, and the angel prevailed.
Angel. Yeah, it was an angel.
Or he struggled with the angel and prevailed. He wept and sought favor from him. And he found him in Bethel.
Bethel.
And there he spoke to us. That is Yahweh,
Elohim.
Elohim of hosts. Yahweh is his memorable name.
Oh, there it is. That's good. Yeah.
So you, by the help of your Elohim, return. Observe mercy and justice, and wait on your Elohim
Thank
continually.
you, David. This is perfect. This really.
Thank you, David. I missed that one.
Yeah, very much so. It fits.
He struggled with the angel and then he spoke to Yahweh.
Now, question. Who else has, or can, or will, in the future, see Yahweh? Anybody? How about us, the believers, in the first resurrection? Not as we stand now in the flesh,
Right.
but in those who see the first resurrection. Let us turn to 1 John 3. First John 3, verse 1. Behold, what manner of love the Father has bestowed upon us, that we should be called the children of Elohim, or the children of Yahweh. Therefore, the world does not know us, because it does not know him. Verse 2, Beloved, we are now the children of Yahweh, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be. So we're not clear on what that is yet. It has not yet been revealed what we shall be. Why? Because we got vague references, as in faintly in a mirror, if you will. Dimly in a mirror. But we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, and we shall see him as
He is.
come on, with me, as he is.
Yes.
It is then we will be able to see him in that full glory. Because we will be like that as
That's
well.
one of the most important verses in the Bible.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, Raquel.
We'll have spiritual bodies that we can
We will
stand
have the
up.
spiritual, yes, Raquel, thank
We'll
you.
stand up
We will
power.
have, you are absolutely correct, Raquel. We will have the spiritual bodies that will enable us to do that. And plus we will be the pure of heart and be full of all these Beatitudes that we're reading of in Matthew 5. And everything else we can imagine and can't imagine that we might need. We will be fully complete then. It is then we will be perfect and be able to see the Father as he is. I mean, remember Moses couldn't even see Yahshua he was speaking to in all his glory at that time, let alone the Father. Now we'll be able to see Yahshua in all his glory. And eventually, if we can see Yahshua in all his glory, by extension, the Father as well. Yes. Because we will be those priests and those kings and sit with Yahweh forever. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Okay, Tom?
This identity of the Messiah is such a mystery to so much of the professing world that claims that they follow the scriptures of who this being is, that is clearly stated by implication when Yahshua says in John 5:36 and 37, I'll just paraphrase for interest of time, no one has ever seen the Father, or rather heard the Father, or seen his shape at any time. How plain is that? So he's revealing there that he's come to reveal the Father to this world as the spokesman, or the Word of Elohim, this he has as another title. When I saw this years ago, I thought, it's just saying it right there. The only one that could be conceivably talking about is the Messiah himself, the so-called God of the Old Testament. Excuse me.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, let's go back to Matthew 5, please, then. We'll continue from there. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of Yahweh. Blessed are the peacemakers. So amongst other things, we're going to be these peacemakers. Those Yahweh calls complete and calls perfect, and who has all the attitudes, all the characteristics he desires. We will be, amongst other things, peacemakers. Now, what I want to do here is we're going to do just a little bit of a contrast here. This is one of these cases I feel this is best examined by way of a contrast, and then we will actually go to something that reflects it a little bit more, better. But let's start with a contrast. Let's go to Psalm 16, please. Not Psalm 16, Psalm 6.
Psalm what?
Excuse me, I don't know why I said Psalm. I think I meant Proverbs. Proverbs 6, please. Don't ask me why I said Psalms. I meant Proverbs 6. I don't know why I said Psalm. I didn't mean Proverbs. Let's pick it up in verse 12, please. Get a little bit of context here. This will help make our contrast a bit more perfect. We really want to focus on 16 through 19, but if we pick it up in 12, that'll help give us a little bit more context. help us understand this perhaps. Verse 12. Proverbs 6, verse 12. A worthless person, a wicked man, walks with a perverse mouth. What did Joshua teach us about the mouth? Well, what comes out of it comes from where? His heart. That's correct. It comes from their heart. He winks with his eyes and he shuffles his feet and he points with his fingers. Perversity is in his heart and he devises evil continually. He sows discord. Therefore his calamity shall come suddenly. Suddenly he shall be broken without remedy. Can anyone think of someone like that it might have happened to in writings of what we today call the New Testament? Someone, their calamity came suddenly, be broken without remedy. How about Iscariot? Judas Iscariot. What about Ananias and Sapphira?
Right.
They were their judgment came quickly. They didn't see it coming. There are a few others we could go into. These 6 things Yahweh hates. Yes, 7 are an abomination to him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans. Well, we got a fairly good description of Iscariot right there. He devised a wicked plan to sell out Messiah, sell out Joshua, and he had his part in shedding his blood. Feet that are swift to running to evil. A false witness who speaks lies, and one who sows discord amongst the brethren. So this is a good contrast, actually a quite powerful contrast what we just read in Matthew 5:9. Let's jump forward to 1 Corinthians 1, please. Corinthians chapter 1, and we will pick it up in verse 11. Actually, let's pick it up in verse 10. We're going to start in verse 10. Now I plead with you, brethren, by the name of our Master Yahshua Messiah, that y'all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that you should be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. For it has been declared to me concerning you, my brethren, by those of Chloe's household, that there are contentions among you. Now I say this, that each of you says, well, I'm of Paul, or well, I'm of Apollos, or I'm of Cephas, or I'm of Messiah. Verse 13. Well, is Messiah divided? Was Paul crucified for you? Was I crucified for you? No. Or any of these others? Or were you baptized into the name of Paul? That I thank you, Yahweh, that I baptized none of you except Crispus and maybe Gaius, lest anyone should say that I have baptized in my own name. Yes, I also baptized the household Stephanus, but other than that, I don't recall baptizing another. For Messiah did not send me to baptize, but to preach the gospel, not with wisdom of words, lest the cross of Messiah should be made of none effect. So ideally there's supposed to be no division in the household of Messiah. household of Yahweh. Now, as those seemingly, now we're seeming to go somewhere, because we're segueing here from a contrast into something that's a bit more directly reflective of the teaching in Matthew. We're segueing from a division into actually settling the peace. And this is here's Paul's attempt to settle the peace, if you will, of the Corinthian church. Let's check Acts 6, please. Back up a little bit to the book of Acts. Now, if any of y'all have any thoughts or ideas or questions, feel free. Okay, well, all right, Tom takes me up on it, okay?
I can't remember exactly the companion to this, but elsewhere, and a dear brother years ago told me, I know you're looking upset, because I can tell it, the tears running down your cheeks, over some divisions that have occurred of late among brethren that have been for so many years together, and yet they're going for now, it wasn't, we were totally cut off permanently, but they're going their own separate way to the Feast of Tabernacles. And he reminded me that elsewhere Paul says, I hear there's divisions among you. This is also somewhere else in Corinthians, and I can't find it, but you can look it up. I hear there's divisions among you, or heresies, I think the King James says, and I partly believe it. But he says these things.
That's in chapter 5.
These,
That's in chapter 5.
1 Corinthians 5?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, these must occur so that those that are approved of Yahweh will be made manifest. I went, wow, okay, blow me away.
I miss
What
that.
does that
So
work?
it's meant to happen then, what you're saying.
Be
Well,
made manifest.
Well, I don't know that it was meant to happen, but it was, all things were said and done knowing they were going to happen. Knowing as
Exactly.
knowing human beings, flesh and blood like we are, right?
Yeah, he wasn't being cynical, he was just being realistic.
Yeah,
What was
thank you,
going
Tom.
on with
That's
the
the correct term. Yahweh was not being cynical. Now we're going to cause these. No, he wouldn't, because he's not the author of confusion. But who is? That's right. So he was just being. Yahweh and Yahshua and Paul were all just being realistic, understanding human nature the way it was. Acts chapter 6, verse 1. Now in those days, where the number of disciples was multiplying, there arose a complaint against the Hebrews by the Hellenists, that is, the Greeks, the Gentile believers, because their widows were neglected in the daily distribution. Because remember, at this time, they still lived most of them lived all together in Jerusalem, in the same in the same area, in the same neighborhood, if you will. Because they were they were selling lands, they were putting all things into the common pool. That's explained in a couple of earlier chapters, a couple of previous chapters. Because verse 2, then the 12 summoned the multitude of the disciples and said, it is not desirable that we should leave the word of Yahweh to serve tables. Therefore, brethren, seek out from among you 7 men of good reputation, full of the Holy Spirit and full of wisdom, that we may appoint over this business. But we will give ourselves continually to prayer and to the ministry of the word. That way they were going to continue to preach, to continue their spreading of the gospel. They were to continue. Their idea was to make themselves available to prayer and to spreading the word, as Joshua had instructed them to. Verse 5, and the saying pleased the whole multitude. Now remember, they're not really settling the peace here, but the disciples only are directly, but who's actually settling the issue? Who's really resolving this dispute between the women of the Gentiles and the Jews? Who's actually doing the work of doing that? Remember, these guys here, these folks, the disciples, they said, let's appoint 7 good men to handle this. They didn't do it themselves. So it's these 7 good men that are doing it. And the saying pleased the whole multitude. And they chose Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Holy Spirit, and Philip, Prochorus, Nicanor, Timon, Parmenius, and Nicholas, a proselyte from Antioch. So even so one of them was non-Israelite, was a non-Jew, was a non-Israelite. Remember, because it says Nicholas, he was a proselyte from Antioch with a name like that. He was probably most likely Greek, wasn't he?
Right.
With a name like that, most likely. Whom they set before the apostles, and when they had prayed, they laid their hands on them. Then the word of Yahweh spread, and the number of disciples multiplied greatly in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And a great many of the priests were also obedient to the faith. Remember so what's the lesson here? One lesson here is out of verse 7. Because after they had settled a dispute, after some discord, if you will, had aroused in their own house, they had to settle that first, right?
Right.
I mean, can we really spread the word of the gospel here if we're full of strife and discord in our own house? If your own house is not in order? No. Because it was after they had settled this issue in the household of faith. It was, please note, they had settled this issue first. Then the word of Yahweh spread.
Right.
And it spread even into the priesthood. To the priest. So it's not an issue of one being more important than another, but it's an issue of settling an internal strife, internal disputes of first things first. It was the 7 men listed who made the peace in the household of faith, while the disciples concentrated on prayer and spreading the word. And of course, well, the story, it's not really pertinent to the story, but what's the rest of Stephen's story? After he's so good at doing his job and his work, he gets himself in trouble with the Sanhedrin. That's how good he's done his job. He does it to that level, that he troubles them. In a manner of speaking, you could say that's a profile or description of a man doing what happened to him. That's a man who did his job, if for lack of better words, too well. That's how well he did his job. Anybody else? Any thoughts, any comments, any questions? Yes, Tom?
This really ties in with this unity that Messiah is bringing to his brethren and teaching, which elsewhere Paul says, endeavoring to keep the unity of the faith and the bond of shalom of peace. And we read in the scriptures that the parts that seem less attractive in the body, we should even seem to us, that maybe necessarily don't look that way to our father and elder brother, but the parts that seem less attractive, we esteem all the more highly, so there might not be any schism or division in the body.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like such a critical thing, that if we do that, something shows up. I've seen it happen with the Holy Spirit where people are knit back together when they show proper esteem for other brothers and sisters rather than just themselves.
And it's funny because, again, when I say funny, I don't mean ha-ha, I mean peculiar. But when Paul goes around spreading the gospel, spreading the word, as do the rest of the disciples, what's Paul's pattern? He doesn't appoint, he himself doesn't settle the dispute himself. He appoints good men over these congregations. That's his pattern. That was a pattern that continued. My idea and message was, don't make me come there myself and do it. There's a couple of places where he says that, but then again, those are the exception, not the rule. But there's an exception to the point that he had to speak on it, like in 11 to the Corinthian church. Anybody else? Okay, let's go back to Matthew 5, please. Because the reason I like this account of Stephen in this is that he fits in so much very well. His account fits in so well to much of what we've studied up to this point and what's going to follow. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We just read the account of Stephen in Acts chapter 6 and on through 7. He is accused by the Sanhedrin. He is put on trial and condemned to death. Blessed are you when they revile and persecute you, and say all kinds of things of evil against you falsely for my mistake. For my sake. Rejoice, verse 12, and be exceedingly glad. For great is your reward in heaven. For they so persecuted the prophets who were before you. What prophets? Well, how about virtually all the prophets? Next week we're going to pick up in a study of Ezekiel where he was persecuted for his, and all the prophets were. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Isaiah. Virtually all the prophets listed in the writings here, in the prophetic books, they were. We want a listing of people who were persecuted for their faith. Let's go to Hebrews 11, please. This goes back even further than the prophets. Hebrews 11, starting in verse 4. By faith, Abel offered to Yahweh a more acceptable sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained a witness that he was righteous. Yahweh testifying of his gift, and though he being dead still speaks. By faith, Enoch was taken away so that he did not see death. He was not found because Yahweh had taken him. For he was taken, had his testimony, that he pleased Yahweh. But without faith it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Yahweh must believe that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. By faith, Noah being divinely warned of things not yet seen, but with a righteous fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household, by which he condemned the world, becoming heir of righteousness, which is according to faith. Wasn't it Abraham? Sarah? Picking it back up in verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen afar, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. For those by who say such things declare they plainly seek a homeland. And truly, they had called to mind that country from which they had come out of, they would had opportunity to return. Abraham could have just as well gone back to Ur, but he chose not to. Moses could have remained in the hand of the Pharaoh, at the service of the Pharaoh, but he did not. Now they had a desire, but now that they desire a better, that is, a heavenly country, Therefore Yahweh is not ashamed to be called their Elohim, for he has prepared a city for them. We read of that in Revelation 21 and 22,
Right.
and Isaiah 65 as well. By faith, Abraham, when he was tested, offered up Isaac, who had received the promises of his only begotten son, of whom it was said, "In Isaac your seed shall be called," concluding that Yahweh was able to raise him up, even from the dead, which he also received in a figurative sense. Goes, picking up verse 23, goes into the account of Moses. Goes into the account of others as well. Verse 32, remaining in Hebrews 11. What more shall I say? For the time would fail me to tell of Gideon and Barak and Samson and Jephthah, who also of David and Samuel and the prophets, for who through faith subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, and stopped the mouths of lions, quenched violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women also received their dead raised to life again. Others were tortured, not accepting deliverance, that they might attain the better resurrection. Still others had trials of mocking, scourging, yes, of chains and imprisonment. They were stoned, they were sawn in two. They were tempted, slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, and tormented, of whom this world was not worthy. They wandered in the deserts and mountains and in dens and caves of the earth. When we read the accounts of Kings, both books of Kings, Chronicles, we read of this. One man did this just for a season to escape the hand of Jezebel. Remember after all her prophets were killed at Carmel?
Right.
She didn't see the light. All she did was go from bad to worse. It made her mad. Yahweh had made himself manifest to the whole world, to all of Israel. And what did do to Ahab's wife? She got mad. All these, having obtained the good testimony through faith, verse 39, did not receive the promise, at least not yet. Yahweh having provided something better for us, that they should not be made perfect apart from us. That they should not be made perfect apart from us, which explains the resurrection. That's the key. That's a piece of the puzzle regarding the resurrection. The resurrection. Remember, what does it mean them being made perfect? In the end, it's the first resurrection, is it not? First, the dead Messiah will be raised, which is all the people we just read about, and then us the believers, and at that time, those who remain. And these people who see that first resurrection, they will be the kings and priests of Messiah, ruling 1,000 years on the face of the earth. Any questions or any comments? Well, this will conclude study of the Beatitudes. I hope everyone has found this informative and exhorting.
The beautiful attitudes.
And we'll be back 1 o'clock next week. The All Hunts branch will be up with the study.